Live from the UK, broadcasting around the world, you're listening to Talking Minaret, discussing matters that affect you, streaming to the world and beyond.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Talking Minaret. Some of you might have heard about the Pope's recent visit to Iraq on the 8th of March 2021. That's despite the restrictions that are happening with coronavirus, but the Pope still managed to put that visit in. So why is this significant? Well, the Vatican has long been a tool of US foreign policy. This is why the Pope's visit to Iraq is significant. We're going to explain why. Hugh Wilson, who served as US ambassador to Germany before the outbreak of World War II, said that the Pope had the best information service in the world. In fact, a declassified CIA report from 1978 stated that a Polish Pope would rejuvenate nationalism in Poland and the other Soviet-occupied states, posing a serious challenge to Soviet authority and stability. The Reagan administration viewed the Catholic Church as a very important ally in the war against communism, in fact. And a Cold War historian, John Lewis Gaddis, identifies Pope John Paul II as an instrumental figure in settling the course of the Soviet Union's demise. The See of Rome today maintains a strong diplomatic relationships with many countries. It serves as a valued source of information for Western diplomats and diplomatic services and remains a target of foreign intelligence organizations. So that's a bit of a context as to the function of the Vatican. As not just a symbol of, Christian religiosity, but it serves other purposes as well. So back to Iraq, the Pope visited 4 Iraqi areas, including Baghdad, and met the President Bahram Saleh, Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi, and several Kurdish leaders. On the second day of his tour, the Pope headed south to Al-Najaf, where he held a historic meeting with the Shia authority Ayatollah Sistani before visiting the ancient city of Ur, which is believed to be the birthplace of Prophet Ibrahim as-Salam, and held an interfaith prayer there in which representatives of Islam and the church took part. The main aim of the visit was propagating the principle of religious coexistence under the umbrella of Abrahamic religions, which has been exploited on a micro level. We see all the time with the whole interfaith campaign that's happening within our local mosques. It's been exploited in this context to justify the alliance and normalization with the Zionist entity. Hence, the Pope's visit to Ur was not innocent. The visit was designed to propagate liberal democracy, which attends to the rights of minorities and individuals, and kind of integrate all the faiths, put them under the banner of secularism, which is supposedly neutral towards all religions. So you got secularism at the top, and you got all the other religions, including Islam, at the bottom. So there've been recent movements, in fact, in that area where the West, headed by America, and by use of its tools, such as the Pope. The movements that have been happening in that area, such as supporting the Hawza of Al-Najaf rather than the Hawza of Qum. Hawza is like a school of theology where Shia Muslim scholars are educated. So this gives an official status to the Hawza of Al-Najaf and marginalizing the Iranian-influenced Hawza of Qum, in order to weaken Iranian influence in Iraq's political forces. This is basically designed to integrate the Zionist entity into the Middle East and marginalize the Iranian influence. This is important. We're going to go into this a bit later on. Like I say, it's common knowledge that the Vatican has played a pivotal role in serving the interests and the aims of the US and Israel in several issues, such as the internationalization of Al-Quds. And just like we talked about how the Vatican was very instrumental in aiding the US to dismantle the Soviet Union, as stated in the declassified CIA report in 1978, which also mentions that the Polish Pope would resurrect nationalism in Poland and other countries under Soviet occupation, and therefore that would destabilize the USSR. This so-called peace-loving Pope is the one who pressed against military intervention in Syria in 2013. in response to the use of chemical weapons against the masses. This was when the US opted to not intervene militarily. He aided Obama by instructing the papal diplomats to contact more than 70 foreign ambassadors and inform them of the Pope's aversion to military intervention in Syria, which led Iran to describe the Pope's style of halting aerial strikes against the Syrian regime as impressive. So we're getting the picture of the fact that the Pope isn't as apolitical as people might think. Back to Iraq. Further to this, the Pope's visit sends a message of support to the followers of the Shia sect of the Gulf states and religious minorities in the Islamic world. Protecting religious minorities for America and the colonialist powers gives grounds for intervening and dividing Muslim lands under the guise of protecting holy areas and, religious and ethnic minorities in the name of so-called freedom and democracy. This is what happened when Britain allowed the Chinese to immigrate to Singapore until they became the majority. It also happened in southern Sudan and East Timor, and it is underway in the Kurdish areas and the Shia areas in Yemen. This is why the US Congress has enacted the law of intervention to protect religious minorities. Also, some of you might be aware that in the Muslim lands there's been a change occurring to the education curricula, removing Quranic verses, hadith, distorting the concepts, especially in the Gulf region and Al-Sham, to identify with the Abrahamic religion, and the alliance deals with the Zionists. Meanwhile, Muslim minorities in, the European countries continue to endure the oppression and discrimination. Then this is in the so-called countries of freedom, democracy, human rights and all that stuff. The Pope's personal visit to Sistani was a token of appreciation and gratitude for the services he rendered to the US when he called on the people of Iraq in 2004 to cooperate with America and refrain from fighting her, not to mention his other services to America, such as to help to dismantle the Popular Mobilization Forces and integrate them within the Iraqi state and separate them from Iran. The most important feature of this visit is that it came as a complement to what America had started in the Emirates 2 years ago. This is important. When the Pope met the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayyib, and signed what was dubbed as the Document of Human Fraternity, which instituted the notion of Abrahamic faith. Although this is refuted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. In Surah Al-Imran, verse 67, Allah says, Ibrahim as-salam was neither a Jew nor a Christian, but was one who turned away from all that is false, having surrendered himself unto Allah, and he was not of those who ascribe divinity to anything besides him. It's disgraceful that the Pope is assuming this role, propagating secularism and atheism, which turned against the Church during the so-called Age of Enlightenment and declared war on religion. So it's a bit strange that he's taking on that role. This guy is being harnessed to subjugate his religion and church to serve the atheists and the secularists, the capitalists and the colonialism. This visit has trampled over the dignity of the Muslims. It would not have taken place had it not been for America's agents in Iraq, headed by Sistani, Bakram Saleh and Kadimi, who greeted the Pope. It is also offensive for those who claim to love Ahl al-Bayt to repeat the treason of Ibn al-Alakami during the Abbasid era. Read about it. So in order for Muslims to regain their sovereignty and their power over their lands and to liberate themselves, then they must work towards resuming the Islamic way of life. The Pope's visit was to promote religious coexistence under the umbrella of Abrahamic faiths, and it's also to promote liberal democracy, integrate all faiths, and to put secularism on a pedestal. And also the Pope's visit is linked to aiding the US bid to reshape Middle East intellectually and politically, and also to weaken the Iranian influence on Iraq and to integrate the Zionist entity within the security, economics, and the societal fabric of the Middle East. We'll leave it there. Join us next time. Share this, get the message out there, and Assalamu alaikum.